I brought a gift wrapped in old newspaper, corners taped down with clear packing tape, topped with a skinny navy bow I'd trimmed off a ribbon from base. Inside was a wood plaque I'd burned myself with a soldering tip, Cedar Ridge High's football logo, edges singed like a helicopter tail carving a line across a map. The church hall smelled like barbecue and vanilla candles. Balloons were tied to folding chairs. A banner read, "Happy 63rd, Jim," and bowed a little in the a/sea breeze. Dad stood in the middle in a button-to-the-top shirt with a tiny flag pin on his chest. He loves things neat, like life is a row of buttons you close straight, no slant allowed. Paige swept in like a self-appointed MC, cream dress, big hair, brighter smile. Trevor hovered half a step behind her, iPad tucked against his ribs. I wore a simple green dress and flats, waited near the sheet cake to hand Dad his present quietly when it felt right. I didn't get the chance. Paige clapped for attention. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate Dad. Oh, and good news, we're expanding the shop with a new home scent line. Contract signed." Applause rolled. Forks chimed on plates. The sound had the tinny echo of tools in a hanger. Part of me wanted to disappear into the noise. Dad turned and grinned at me. "Kendall, you made it." That smile warmed me like the old army blanket I used to pull over my knees on cold midnight shifts. I held out the box. "Made this for you," I said. He laid a hand on the lid, about to open it, when Paige slid in. "My little sister's handy, fixes helicopters and wood burns like a pro." That last part stretched half a beat too long. A few polite chuckles followed. I didn't love the way fixes helicopters got rounded off like a hobby. Trevor took it as his cue. He moved closer, quiet voice, sharp edges. "Kendall, we're scaling up and need a credible name for a compliance consultant. You just lend your name, I'll handle the paperwork." Paperwork hit my ear like metal scraping hangar floor, dry, hard, no friction from a conscience. I shook my head. "I don't consult on anything I'm not hands-on with." Trevor smiled. "We're family. We help each other. Small town, you know. Our good name is your good name." Their good name set on my name like a parts crate on a deck. Easy to place, easy to kick aside if it leaks. Dad cleared his throat, eyes skimming the guests waiting with paper plates. "Don't be stubborn in front of everyone." He wasn't harsh, but stubborn hit like a rivet to the ribs. I kept my eyes on him. "I'm not stubborn. I don't sign what I don't understand." Paige laughed, the laugh of someone used to steering a room. "Oh, please, it's just a signature. Try helping family for once instead of rules and checklists." The vanilla suddenly tasted too sweet. The army taught me to speak short when the cabin's rattling. The shortest sentence gets through the noise. "No." Trevor switched tactics. "If you won't sign, at least don't make a scene. Your dad likes a tidy party." I looked at Dad, his gaze slid off mine for a beat. In his eyes, I saw a man strung between two posts, a daughter and his pride. Paige tilted her head, hand on Dad's shoulder, and pitched her voice to the room. "All right, cake time." Applause swelled. In Dad's hands, my plaque got heavier, like I'd set the whole airfield gently in his palms and asked him not to drop it. I didn't want it fused to this moment. I stepped back. "Excuse me," I said even. "Kendall," Dad called, but the word got swallowed by "happy birthday," picking up the high note. The hallway was cool. Night wind threaded through the pines. Out on the practice field, the high school team ran drills under white lights. The marching band threw notes in clumps, wobbly, then locking together like a giant rotor finding RPM. I leaned on the cold rail and watched the yard lines. My per-flight checklists came back like muscle memory. Bolts, oil, harness, comms. Checklists don't lie. Paper trails don't flatter. I opened my phone and typed a note. "Don't lend the name, don't let anyone use it." The hall door thunked open. Paige's heels clicked up behind me. "How long you gonna do this little girl act? You came home so we could move up together, help or stay quiet." "I'll be quiet," I said, "when the truth isn't bent." "Oh, preaching now." Trevor showed up behind her, keys hooked on a finger. "Last offer, a little cash to forget this. You've got army pay, but nobody hates extra." That landed like a drip of oil on the hangar floor, small, slick enough to make you slip. I met his eyes. "I don't want your money. I want my name clean." Paige hissed, barely above a whisper, "Then don't sit at our table." I left. No door slam, no scene, just walking. The banner in the hall would keep fluttering, the song would crest without me. I fired up my old pickup, it coughed awake like an old friend. The radio guy was hyping next week's regional semifinal and Friday night fireworks. I thought about Dad, how he loves a football field, straight stripes, and how he just told me not to be stubborn. In his world, staying quiet might be the highest form of courtesy. In mine, silence can burn an engine down. On the way home, I swung by Walt's to return a pair of pliers I'd borrowed. The porch light threw a dull gold circle on a few squat cacti standing guard like quiet sentries. Walt opened the door in a faded VFWT, soda in hand. "Kiddo, you good?" I leaned on the jamb. "Good enough, just not the night I hoped for." He nodded. "Got brisket, want a bite to warm up?" I smiled and shook my head. As I turned to the gate, a USPS truck braked at the curb. The carrier leaned out. "Anyone here K. Brooks, signature required." Walt looked at me. I looked at the label, K. Brooks, bold Walt's address, my last name. I took the brown box, thick board, one crushed corner. My heart beat slow and steady, ticking off a checklist. K. Brooks, my name on a veteran's stoop. I signed. The ballpoint bled a little into the cardboard. As the ink sank in, I knew the night wasn't over. Not with a birthday song. With a door swinging open, something that went to the wrong place, or finally landed exactly where it was meant to. I set the brown parcel on the passenger seat of my pickup. The cardboard was a little crushed, clear tape filmed with dust like it had ridden a back road. Under Walt's porch light, K. Brooks sat bold and black in the center, an arrow with my name on it. Crickets, a drift of mesquite smoke across the lawn. "Keep it, kiddo," Walt said, low and easy. "If it's meant for you, it found the right door." I slid into the seat, nicked the tape with a blade. A clean little RR rip. The lid lifted the way a cowling does when the pressure's bled off. Not a stray birthday present. Inside, a fat clip-bound stack, an envelope with the Small Business Administration logo, and a welcome letter from the local bank that read, "Welcome, new partner." I laid each page across the steering wheel like parts set out in order. A PPP thank you, compliance guidelines, and an advisory contract. Consultant, Kendall Brooks. The signature at the bottom was mine, but it was the PDF scanned kind, fake handshake, pretend rush scribble. People miss the tiny tells. My K always hooks left, learned to write that way in tactical gloves. On this page, the hook was a swollen ink blob like a boot print. Under it sat a payroll printout from a popular software, names, hours, pay, deductions, and a column of SSNs masked out. 6 employees, 3 names I'd never heard. 2 I knew, not from the candle table at my sister's shop, from the church memorial board. Clara May, soft smile, butterfly hair clip, lavender background. Ethan Cole, a kid in a football jersey, a prayer card taped beside a plastic bouquet. Cold climbed my palms like I'd gripped wet metal. I opened the bank letter. "We are excited to partner with Hartley Home and Style. Your advisory retainer ensures compliance and community leadership." Advisory retainer. Translation. My name is a windbreak so their boat could glide. Fresh ink smelled sharp. There was even a one-pager titled Best Practices for Payroll Integrity, irony thick enough to staple. Walt clicked his tongue softly, hand on the doorframe, not reaching for the papers, just reading my face. I reclipped the stack, neat as a wiring diagram, slid it back in order. Inside the lid was a return address, Trevor Hartley, Hartley Home and Style, Finance. So why Walt's porch? The label had a faint extra line. K. Brooks forwarding. Maybe lazy sorting at the post office. Maybe a name made fuzzy on purpose. The paper trail started earlier than I'd planned, but the route went back years. When that engine turned over, it threw me to the winter I was 13, pedaling a paper route over damp hills, fingers numb on the bars, messenger bag sagging with the Cedar Ridge Chronicle. I kept the tips in a tin under my bed, counted with ink-eye fingers each week. I wanted a decent wrench set to make Walt's old moped run smooth. One night page breezed in, lotion and fruit sent first. "Lend me a little back tomorrow." "How much?" "Almost all." That dropped like a bolt slipping from your fingers into a dark bay. In the morning the tin was light. I asked Dad. He froze a beat. "Your sister's starting a little project. Family helps family. So she'll pay it back when sales pick up." I waited. Winter stretched. The money never returned. What did return was a hole I patched with discipline. If others bend their rules, I keep mine straighter. Back in the cab, I set the stack on my thigh and uncapped a marker. I underlined, PPP Advisory Retainer Employees, 6. Next to Clara May and Ethan Cole, I drew a question mark. On my phone, I pulled up the church site Obituaries tab. Clara's photo bloomed in a purple frame. Ethan's memorial from 2 years ago sat beside the team picture, his jersey number retired to the gym rafters. My lips stung where I'd bitten it. If they're gone, who's clocking hours under their names? If someone moved away, why are hours still hitting here? And why am I the consultant for that coincidence? Walt tapped the window. Want something warm? I nodded. We took the box into his kitchen, scarred wood table, a couple of heat rings from hot pans, a VFW mug. I spread the pages like a rotor schematic. Walk it with me, I said. Walt kept his hands off, pointing from a respectful inch. That's a common payroll platform. 6 employees means there should be 941s, W-2s, and this contract. He raised an eyebrow. Where'd they get your signature? I remembered permission slips, holiday cards. The Times page asked me to sign postcards because your handwriting's cleaner. Small carelessness years ago. Turns out it made a stencil someone fed into a PDF. I pulled a blank sheet. Rules of engagement. Break no laws. Everything on paper. No head-to-heads empty-handed. No more hands on my name. By the time I finished, my spine had leveled out. Wind rattled the back door curtain, scrubbing the last of the smoke smell. I slid the advisory contract and payroll into a clear folder and snapped it shut. Garage tomorrow, Walt said. Laser printer, spare USBs, we'll build you a corner. I'll need a burner email, a separate phone, and a pull list from the county clerk, I said. Before I left, I texted Paige. Package addressed to me turned up. You send that by mistake. The 3 dots bubbled, died. Nothing. I texted Trevor. Remove my name from any contract, now. One icy scene. Dad called. I let it hum until it quit, not because I was madder at him than anyone else, but because I needed the world quiet long enough to hear the engine in my head. Checklist clicking on, paper trail drawing itself steady. Back in the lot, I set my forehead on the wheel for one breath and sent Walt one line. See you 7:30. I stared at the numbers. An exact time is a kind of oath. Some fights don't need a weapon. They need enough light, clear paper, and a name you refuse to let anyone dirty. Morning in Cedar Ridge smelled like wet grass and mesquite smoke, thin as a scarf. I drove past the Oaks to Walt's place. Sunlight cut through a faded VFW banner on his porch. The garage door was already up. The fluorescent tube flickered once, then held steady. Walt unfolded 2 banquet tables, set down a ream of paper, a suitcase-sized laser printer, and a sealed pack of USB sticks. He pointed at a cracked vinyl swivel chair. Captain's seat. I grinned. More like flight engineer. Engineer, captain, just don't crash. I laid my black box on the table, last night's parcel, creases sharp on the lid. We didn't paw the contents, our eyes had done that. First order of business was a checklist, same as any pre-flight. Columns, boxes, no drama. I drew lines with a fat marker and labeled them. Target, source, evidence, status. Under target, I wrote, company EIN, PPP submission timeline, payroll export, bank statements, employee list, advisory contract. Source, county clerk, payroll provider, local bank, the parcel, internal emails. Evidence, printouts, photos, metadata, status, blank, waiting. As the ink sank in, my hand steadied. Checklists keep the heart at green RPM. Walt hauled down a plastic tote, power strips, cables, sheets of sticky labels. Tag every lane so we don't cross wires. I nodded and built a code. Alpha for foundation registrations, licenses, Bravo for the punch, payroll export, duplicate SSNs, disbursement to pay mapping, Charlie for comms, emails, voicemails I'd summarized, Delta for images. Not new to me, at the hangar I label every cable and joint so the new kid can follow my work when I'm not there. My phone buzzed. Not Paige, not Trevor. A junk ad. I popped open Walt's tote, took a cheap black prepaid phone and brought it to life. We spun up a new number. I saved a contact that didn't exist yet, Ruiz SBA OIG, just to anchor the intent. Then a burner email, boring address, 2-factor through the prepaid. Each tiny step was grease in a hinge. I pulled the advisory contract and payroll from the parcel again, this time to normalize file names. Walt tapped the table. Make the name tell the story, content, and date. When an investigator or a judge sees it later, the road's already painted. I typed, 2023 PPP Contract Advisory K. Brooks Suspect Signature. PDF, then 2023 Payroll List 6 Staff Roman 20 SSN. PDF. I built Alpha and Bravo folders on USB #1, mirrored them to USB #2, slipped #2 into a zip bag labeled cold. Walt handed me a little calendar. End of day, stash a copy offsite, rotate spots. A dead man's switch isn't just email. On the white garage wall, I taped up a timeline. PPP application date, disbursement date, the first appearance of advisory retainer, and the spike in head count. Beside each sticky square, I left a blank for whatever the county clerk would cough up. The investigation took shape like a rotor wiring diagram, ugly, sure, but every line justified. By lunch, I hit Mrs. Ortiz's diner. Coffee and fryer oil hugged the air. She peered over red frames, asked nothing, set down chicken soup and a warm slice of apple pie, then slid me a check with a line slashed through the total, under signature she'd written on the house. Soldiers need warmth. I tucked my folder under my jacket and sat near the jukebox. A table of high schoolers argued over Friday's lineup. One bragged Paige had donated scented candles for the ticket drive. I set my spoon down. Stadium lights don't just spotlight grass, they spotlight people. Back at the garage, I drafted a request for records to the county, registrations, personnel amendments, any attachments tied to loans. I balanced each sentence like torque, specific enough no one could sidestep, dry enough feelings couldn't smudge it. Walt Reed over my shoulder, tapped the last line. Add thanks and a statement you'll use the info lawfully. I added it and printed, then signed K, Brooks in my real hand, with that tiny leftward hook no one can fake. By late afternoon, we tested the dead man's switch. I opened a blank email to a public SBA OIG fraud inbox, CC'd the state attorney general. No subject, no body, just one line. If you're reading this without my follow-up call, release attached packages Alpha and Bravo. Walt didn't say a word. He didn't have to. Some switches aren't meant to be flipped, just armed, so you build your life like you build a bay, everything safety pinned. I opened my notebook. Yesterday's rules of engagement filled page 1. I added #5, don't get hustled by family. If someone wields that word like a tool, remove the tool with paperwork. I paused, breathed, listened to the printer's fan and Walt's crisp mouse clicks. A pickup burbled past outside. The radio leaked a country song about a small-town Friday night. I don't hate small towns. I hate vanilla sprayed over places that need the smell of truth. When the afternoon light puddled on the concrete floor, round 1 was done. Alpha held the advisory contract, bank letter, and parcel scans. Bravo held the payroll, the 6-name list with 2 flagged, and a skeleton timeline ready for a payroll export. Still missing. Form 941, W2/W3 bank statements. Those would take asks, waits, patience. But the aircraft was prepped, oil good, pressure needles steady, breaker panel green. I poured 2 paper cups of coffee. Walt raised his. To checklists. To checklists, I echoed, cups tapped. I thought of Dad, whether he'd call, whether he wouldn't, caught somewhere between loving his daughter and the mask he wears at church. I can't unmask him. I can only back out the screws holding a lie that uses my name as a washer. As dusk came on, I slid into the flight engineer chair, spun up a second burner email just for outbound, opened the public OIG inbox, and typed the subject first, the way I force myself not to drift. The letters etched themselves slow and clean, like laser on the wood plaque I'd made Dad. Phantom payroll at Hartley Home and Style. I let the cursor blink under it, my pulse syncing with the tiny power LED. A new kind of mission. No sky required. Just honest light and a steady line of ink. I hit the county clerk's office while the glass still wore a skim of morning fog. Inside, dark-stained counter, squat cactus pots on the sill, a little bell that goes ting every time the door opens. The clerk named Tag Sherrill peered at me over cat-eye frames. What can I help you with? I smiled and slid over a sheet I'd prepped. A request for records. I need the business registration and any personnel amendments for Hartley Home and Style over the past year, plus any attached filings. Sherrill nodded, handed me a receipt, and disappeared through a door marked records. I took a plastic chair. A poster said, "Public records are your records." My brain flipped on the checklist. Source, file number, point of contact. The smell of old paper felt like a periodic maintenance bay, something worn but trustworthy, like a bolt that's held its seat through thousands of flight hours. Sherrill came back with a thick manila folder, neatly clipped. Copies we have on hand. Fee is. I paid and accepted it like someone had handed me a helicopter's wiring diagram to hang in a living room. Page 1. Ein, registration date, managing member Paige Brooks Hartley. Next page, recent changes. A personnel amendment dated right around the PPP review week. Full-time employees jumped from 2 to 7, then dropped to 3 months later. Numbers bouncing like a pressure gauge when the oil's low, never a good sign. I flagged the spike with masking tape and penned a note. Matches PPP submission window. Cheryl tilted her head. Research project? Just comparing, I said. She smiled politely and went back to the counter. I swung by the public library on Main. Heavy public PCs, keycaps worn slick. I pulled down Form 941 and W2/W3 instructions from the IRS site, skimmed the notes, wrote out required fields. I don't have access to their tax returns, but I do know what should exist if they are telling the truth. One browser tab on FICA guidance, another on the local paper's PPP recipient list. I scrolled to Hartley Home and Style, not a giant loan, but big enough to justify 6 employees. Like last night's payroll, I copied the link into my notes and wrote, Crossref, local PPP list. At the next table, a kid in a ball cap whispered to a friend while typing up a football essay. Friday's gonna be nuts. I thought about stadium lights and how they don't only light grass, they light people. I printed a small stack, 10 cents a page, clipped it, labeled alpha/reference. Before I left, I texted Walt. Headcount jump synced with PPP review. Need payroll export. Back at the garage, Walt had the printer humming. I spread the county clerk packet on the table and taped entries onto the wall timeline. Arrow from headcount spike to PPP review, then another down to sudden headcount drop. Walt snorted. Pretty as a leak diagram. I pulled the payroll from the parcel again. 6 names, 1 Trey M. I'd seen in last year's yearbook hanging in the library hall, captioned, Graduated, moved to Oklahoma. I wrote okay beside his name and added a question mark. If he moved states, why are hours still hitting here? My personal phone buzzed. Dad. I let it go, another coat of primer on the silence between us. Walt glanced over. Sooner or later, the real man in him will want to understand. Pride'll hold the line. The numbers will hold me, I said, and replayed a voicemail I'd noted from Trevor, more precisely. The content I'd written down after overhearing him on speaker at the birthday. Push manual payroll in April, then adjust in June to clean it up. I don't secretly record people. I document what I inadvertently hear. That tiny line is a bolt I keep torqued to spec. I drafted my first email to a public SBA OIG fraud inbox. Subject, Phantom Payroll at Hartley Home and Style. Preliminary note. Short body. I'm the person whose name was attached to a forged advisory contract. The headcount jump lines up with PPP review. 2 names match deceased locals. 1 name moved out of state but appears on payroll. I attached alpha registrations, parcel scans, held Bravo, payload not heavy enough to drop yet. I hit send. My pulse eased a notch, like a rotor catching the takeoff band, not too high, not too low. That afternoon I visited the local bank. Cool lobby, new carpet smell. I asked a teller about their welcome partner letters in general, playing curious customer. She said I'd need to speak to an account manager. I didn't say Kendall, I asked policy. Consultants need contracts, invoices, sometimes identity verification. I thanked her. No specifics, but enough to spin a gear. If they did verify, my forged signature slipped past someone, or someone didn't look at all. Near dusk, I stopped back at the library to confirm one small thing. Those saved obits. I printed Clara May and Ethan Cole, clipped them with the payroll into Bravo. Faces beside hours and pay made my chest heavy, like I was wearing an extra oil can. Numbers aren't innocent sitting next to a human name. Their promises bent wrong. Out in the lot, my prepaid buzzed. New email. Agent Ruiz appeared on the screen like a call sign out of clear air. Received your note. Need documents to corroborate. Payroll export, bank statements reflecting PPP disbursement and payroll outflow, any contracts with your name. Can you secure and transmit? We can arrange a call. The sodium lights poured yellow on the asphalt, wind tugging at my jacket. Mrs. Ortiz pinged right after. Swing by tonight. Pie waiting. Soldiers need sugar. My shoulders dropped. The assignment was on the board. Like any night per flight, I knew the order: back up, normalize, go get live evidence. Back in the garage, I taped Ruiz's email under the timeline. Walt nodded. So we need the payroll export and statements. And enough quiet long enough for paper to speak louder than people, I said. Beyond the fence, the high school field test flashed its lights. Friday night was coming, both an appointment and a milestone. I pocketed my phone, drew a lungful of shop oil off my jacket, and listed what to request, what to pull, what to cross-check. Paper doesn't lie. I'd let it talk. Evening slid over Cedar Ridge with the slow confidence of a town that knows its own heartbeat. Walt lit the pit out back, coals glowing like stars that had fallen to the dirt. Mesquite smoke lifted, fat crackled, a thin ribbon of blue drifted through the oaks. He salted the brisket like a man gritting a runway, squinting. Eat, then work. Nobody takes off on an empty stomach. I sat on the step, soda sweating down my fingers, crickets and a neighbor yelling for a borrowed ladder stitched into that background noise I knew I'd miss once I was back in a hangar. Walt plated 2 thick slices with pickles and a square of white bread. I bit in deep smoke, meat that fell apart the instant it met my tongue. Heat slid down my throat and dropped me back into my body. I'm a person with a stomach and lungs, not just a task list. What's the agent want? Walt asked, reaching for more napkins. Payroll export. Bank statements showing PPP in and payroll out, every contract with my name on it. I tapped the plate rim and nodded, one item at a time. We headed into the garage as the light thinned. The fluorescent tube snapped on and threw an honest glare across every scratch on the work table. I opened the cold USB, cloned a fresh copy to a second stick, zipped and dated it. Walt hauled down a bolted floor safe, flipped the lid. Used to hold the house deed, now it holds your evidence. I dropped the USB in. The metal-on-metal clack was dry, reassuring. On the timeline wall, I taped up Agent Ruiz's email and drew an arrow under it. Supplemental requests. Beside it, masking tape tags, Alpha payload complete, Bravo payload light. We started standardizing Alpha. Business registration plus personnel spike tied to PPP week from county clerk. Bank welcome partner letter with advisory retainer blurb. The forged advisory contract with my signature. Parcel scans, a photo of the label K. Brooks forwarding. I numbered each item, logged source, print date, custodian. Walt watched and shook his head in an approving, pretty and even way, like when we lay out a socket tray from smallest to largest. For Bravo, I spread the payroll and slid in the printed obits for Clara May and Ethan Cole. I drummed a steady beat on the margin. Seeing their faces next to a column of hours makes me want to strip the whole machine and find the hidden bay. Walt leaned against the post, arms crossed. Don't strip the machine. Follow the money. Money can't act. He handed me a thick envelope. Customer left this at Mrs. Ortiz's. She asked me to pass it along, says manual adjustment. I pulled out a faint payroll draft invoice from a common platform, a sticky on top read manual edge, Aprajun. The back of my neck prickled. I clipped it into Bravo and wrote, fingerprints from inside. Late evening, Mrs. Ortiz texted. If you need to peek at the diner computer, I keep a lot of photos from fairs. Paige promoted the shop there. Maybe background docs show up. I swung by. The neon Ortiz's diner sign blinked. Inside smelled like coffee and brown sugar. She slid me a chair. Apple pie. Then a small envelope. Printed photos from the stadium ticket fundraiser, Paige's candle table in the frame, the sign, seasonal help wanted, good hours. I zoomed in, no faces matching the 6 names on payroll. I snapped them with my phone and sent to the burner. Ref photos fundraiser no match. Back at the garage, Walt and I scheduled the dead man's switch. I opened delayed send. Recipients. The public SBA OIG inbox, CC the State Attorney General, BCC a private address I'd only open if things went sideways. Body clean and spare. If no manual recall within X hours, release attached packages Alpha and Bravo. Walt said, pick a window long enough to abort if the plan shifts. I nodded, hovered my finger, then hit schedule. It felt like arming a flare meant for dark skies, not a party trick. We built one more thing night shifts forget, an ethics board. I block printed it on cardstock and propped it by the printer. Break no laws. Stay out of private life beyond scope. No insults to win an argument. Take nothing that isn't yours. Don't let anyone use your name to sanitize something dirty. Walt read it and nodded. Keep it in sight. Heat makes people forget who they are. Around midnight, the printer hummed and I remembered I hadn't had a real family dinner in a while. Mrs. Ortiz's soup had filled the gap, but the real hole wasn't in my stomach. It sat at a long table with one empty chair, mine, and a sentence, don't be stubborn, still hanging like a wet raincoat. I wrote a sticky and slapped it next to the timeline. When this is over, write Dad. Not to apologize, to explain. I want him to know the difference between making a lawn look straight and making the truth stand up straight. At first light, I checked Alpha one last time, bundled a working Bravo. Employee list, 2 obits, the manual adjustment draft, event photos that don't match. the personnel amendment. I added a missing card, payroll export, CSV/PDF, and statements reflecting payroll outflow. Under how to obtain, I wrote, request from payroll provider via page/Trevor or inside source. I stepped back and looked at the wall. Yellow tabs, white paper, tape lines, arrows like wind paths. Odd feeling. Flying a route I'd mapped myself with real headwinds. While I labeled the envelope Bravo working, my personal phone buzzed. Page, I let it ring out. The screen went dark, lit again. A text, sharp as an elbow jab in a crowd. Meet me at the stadium Friday night, we settle this in-house. I looked at Walt. He set his mug down. They want their stage, we bring our lights. I didn't answer right away. I opened the draft to Agent Ruiz and added, anticipate public confrontation Friday night. We'll transmit Bravo prior to or during event, depending on threat level. Saved. The corner LED blinked. Stadium lights flickered at the edge of my mind. I squared the files and killed the garage lights. Somewhere a late rooster crowed. Warm wind pushed through the pines, carrying 3 familiar smells, trampled grass, fresh yard line paint, and the promise of Friday night lights. The nights this town forgets its worries and listens to the brass. This time, I won't be in the stands. I'll be on the line, not to beat a family, to claim the one thing I've owned since birth, my name. The sky that afternoon was stretched tight like canvas, wind skimming the ground. I was labeling Bravo when a soft brake squeal outside lifted my head. A white USPS truck idled at the curb. The carrier checked a list. Delivery for K. Brooks. Walt and I traded a look. Here, he called. The carrier set a yellow interoffice envelope on the step, a red stamp bleeding interoffice mail across the corner. The label read, faint as a watermark, Hartley Home and Style Finance. That name ran a cold finger down my spine. In the garage, I pulled on thin gloves and scribed the tape. A small, tidy RR rip, the same sound as the first parcel, only this time the smell of pretense was heavier. On top sat a manual payroll sheet, a printed PDF with manual adjustment in the corner and a handwritten note. Apprejun Edge, move hours to P/T, fix rounding. Under it, 3 payroll summary pages with blacked out lines, ink smeared into greasy bars. Beneath those lay a loose scratch note, the hand slanted, the kind you get from someone who writes numbers for a living. Replace Kendall's consultant fee with community outreach to avoid flag. The line ended with a shaky T. I didn't need the rest of the name. A single initial fit the voice that liked to say, let's handle this in-house. Walt kept his hands off the paper, leaned in a palm's length. Fingerprints, he said. I nodded. Community outreach. A pretty coat of paint over a rusted nail. I turned one more page. Letterhead from the bank, a client character letter with an email chain showing it had been sent to Jim Brooks. I read it, each word hard as a rivet. Pillar of the community attests Hartley's compliance, recommends priority for disbursement. At the bottom, Jim Brooks in ink, and a line added by hand. My family does business the right way. I set the page down and drew a lungful through my teeth. That was my dad's pen. Whether he knew the whole picture or not, that letter became a borrowed suit of credibility thrown over me, so no one would flinch at my name on an advisory retainer. For a second I wanted to call him, ask what he'd read, what he thought he was blessing. Then I looked at the ethics board propped by the printer. Don't let heat smash the procedure. I counted bolts in my head, 1, 2, 3. Walt's voice came quiet. Truth stings, but it's still freedom. And it smells like paper, I said. I squared the stack and pulled a ruler. On the margins, I marked Bravo/6. 1 for manual adjustment Apprejun, Bravo/6. 2 for the T. Note Bravo/6. 3 for Dad's character letter. Each one into a clear sleeve. I photographed every page and saved the metadata time, device, location. Walt handed over a red marker. Highlight the shock points. I circled replace Kendall's consultant fee and Dad's signature. 2 red rings. 2 warning lights blinking on a panel only I could see. My prepaid buzzed. Agent Ruiz, if you can transmit summarized docs with visible context, we can initiate preliminary review before full dump. I thumbed back, working Bravo. New internal envelope misdelivered to K. Brooks. Contains manual adjustment and a character letter signed by my father. Will sanitize and transmit selectively. I set a quick call, not for storytelling, just to log escalating risk. Either they felt bold enough to fling paperwork around town, or they were scared enough to address anything to a K. Brooks and hope for an ally. Honey-colored light slid across the porch. I put country on low, not to drown out the printer, but to drown out my head. The Army cadence lives in your bones. I wanted something slow enough for words to walk, not run. I drafted a Bravo summary in a format investigators like: issue, evidence, impact, integrity, safeguard. Issue, phantom payroll, forged advisory contract, laundering consultant fee into community outreach. Evidence, APRA Jun manual adjustment, note replace Kendall's consultant fee, initialed T. Bank character letter signed by Jim Brooks, 2 obituaries, 6-name payroll list, fundraiser photos with no match. Impact, potential PPP misuse, identity misuse my name, payroll tax / withholding misreporting. Integrity safeguard, 2 USB cold backups, scheduled email failsafe, offsite physical safe waltz. I clipped the summary to the front of Bravo and added an index, code, description, page count. When I hit print, pages marched out like a belt of ammunition. Not pretty, not perfumed, but exact. I sent 5 sample pages to Ruiz, sensitive numbers blurred, signatures and handwritten note intact. The reply came quick. Good, proceed, we'll be on standby Friday. Right then the shop light flickered and Paige's text landed. Don't you dare bring this to the stadium, family is family. I looked at the screen, then at the red circle around replace Kendall's. I typed, you put my name on your payroll. I'll put the truth under the lights. 3 dots. Gone. 3 dots. Gone, then, traitor. I didn't answer. Some words aren't for arguing, they're for auditing. Walt pointed at the dead man's switch we'd armed last night. Adjust that timing. I dragged the window right up against Friday night. Added a manual reminder, if I didn't cancel, Alpha and Bravo would go. If I hit send now first, the timer would stay as backup. I read the recipients aloud like a pre-flight. SBA OIG public inbox, CC Attorney General, BCC private. Then I ran the checklist out loud. Battery on, fuel check, circuit breakers in, dead man's switch, armed. Walt shot me a thumbs up. I slid the phone away, that cool, clean feeling you get when hot air finally vents out of a bay. By dusk, I swung through Ortiz's diner. Mrs. Ortiz set a bowl of chili in front of me without a quiz. Eat first. I gave her the bare-bones version of the envelope. She wrinkled her nose. Community outreach. Honey, Paige's community outreach is handing scented candles to the pep squad. I laughed, half caught in my throat. She laid a hand over my wrist. No one gets to smear your name. The word hit the exact threads it needed to, like a bolt catching the right threads on the first try. Driving back, I pulled up at the edge of the empty stadium. Practice lights had just gone dark after the final run-through. Plastic seats waited in rows for tomorrow. I tipped my face to a matte black sky and saw those 2 red circles in my mind again. One around T, one around Jim Brooks. One side calculation, one side pride. Both sprung the same trap, and the trap was named Kendall. I opened my eyes, filled my lungs. No one bends my name but me, and I don't bend. Back in the garage, I slid Bravo into a large envelope, sealed half the flap, ready to rip and send. I drafted the email to Ruiz, left it open. Friday night lights would be the trigger. Before killing the lights, I stood in front of the ethics board and read every line out loud. When I hit #5, I nodded. Somewhere in town, Paige was probably writing a post about community outreach. Here, in this oil and paper room, I saw a different outreach, a hand extended to the truth. I locked up. In my jacket pocket, the prepaid buzzed once. See you Friday. No name, didn't need one. The stadium's globe led a pale ribbon across the sky. I pressed my palm on Bravo the way I lay a hand on a Black Hawk's skin before a night flight. Tomorrow, I'd press. Not to beat them. To keep my name from launching anyone's dirty little rocket ever again. Cedar Ridge's field glittered like a county fair. Popcorn, fresh-cut grass, cleats scraping aluminum steps. The marching band lined up behind the end zone, snare drums ticking a steady pulse like a calm heart. I leaned on the rail beneath a sponsor banner, Hartley Home and Style glossy in the lights. Community outreach wrapped around a candle icon. Dust floated in the beams like hangar mist. In my head, the cadence clicked. Battery on, fuel check. Dead man's switch armed. Walt moved a stride off my shoulder, hands empty, eyes never leaving the crowd. Not a bodyguard, leverage. When the horns hit, push it, he said without looking. And talk slow. They'll try to drag you into theater. I nodded, Bravo hard copy in my pocket, prepaid in my fist. The lights washed across booster moms, kids with jersey number stickers on their cheeks, middle-aged men hugging paper cups of coffee. Flesh and blood America thinks football is the center tonight. My center is my name. Paige found me first. VIP lanyard flashing, lipstick dead on. Trevor tucked close, jacket pressed, smile thin as a razor. Dad trailed last, eyes dodging mine, older than at his birthday. Paige open like a shop owner greeting customers. We don't need a scene here. Let's step under the stands, fewer eyes. Fewer lights, you mean? I kept it clear enough to hear, soft enough not to be a show. Walt cleared his throat, circuit breaker in. We stopped at the gap by the stairs. Brass warmed up below, notes scattering like filings, then magnetizing into a line. Trevor offered a slim envelope. Attorney fees and a goodwill stipend. Sign the withdrawal and we're done. I eyed the envelope, let a smile skid across it. Goodwill or manual adjustment? His eye twitched. You think you've got this all figured out? Just enough. Like your shorthand, replace Kendall's consultant fee with community outreach. I pulled a page from Bravo, the folder fell open like a bay door. There was the note, initialed Shaky T. Trevor blanched. You fabricated that. Fabricated? I flipped the second sheet, the character letter with Jim Brooks at the bottom. I looked at Dad. You signed this, called us a family that does business right. He jerked his hand back like from a hot exhaust. I thought it was just a reference, Paige said. Paige cut in. You did right, Dad, and you, Kendall, what do you want? Humiliate us? Tear down what I built? I shook my head. I want Kendall Brooks taken off anything it doesn't belong on. I tapped the red ring I'd drawn. And it's on there because of you. Paige stepped closer, voice lowered but barbed. Do you know what this town remembers? Who makes it prettier? Who brings candles to fundraisers? Who buys the team uniforms? You fix helicopters somewhere else and come home to preach. My breath slowed. You know what else they remember, these two? I held up another print, Clara May and Ethan Cole, obituaries beside a payroll list. And the kid who moved out of state. Your payroll remembers them the wrong way. Trevor snatched for the stack. Walt slid half a step forward, no touch, just a wall. No one lays a hand on her. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught a couple faces turning our way. I narrowed the circle, lowered my voice. One more thing, Bravo is ready. Dead man's switch is timed. All I have to do is this. I raised the prepaid, opened the draft to Agent Ruiz, one tap away. The cursor blinked like LOW rotor RPM. I'll pay, Paige burst, eyes bright. How much? What do you think you lost? Your honor, I'll buy it. We'll throw a community outreach in your name. You'll be the hero, okay? A recruiter's smile, a glossy offer. My answer didn't come from my throat. It came from the place in me that has stood alone in grit and wind and didn't shake. No one buys my name, I said. All you can rent is your own silence. Dad sagged at the shoulders. Kiddo, you're embarrassing me. I turned fully to him for the first time tonight. Dad, I've had enough embarrassment watching my signature scanned onto a contract I never saw. I'll take one clean, public shame and be done, instead of tidy forever at a dinner table built on a lie. The lights threw a pale edge under his jaw. The man who taught me to line up boots straight stood in a drift of shuffled paperwork. He started to speak, but the halftime horn cut through. The band surged into their opener. Halftime, my signal. I glanced at Walt, no nod, no shake. He just planted like a tie-down. I looked back at the screen. Send now. 2 words under my thumb. The feel of pressing them wasn't cinematic. It was a switch, fuel pump, one more item in a procedure. I tapped. The phone buzzed. The little paper plane icon flew, a thin line vanishing into white. The snare line rolled harder. Someone else kept time for my heart. 2 buzzes. Auto reply from SBA OIG. Received. Then Ruiz, on file. Proceed as you see fit. Timer backup recommended. I pocketed the phone, kept Bravo hard copy snug against my ribs. Paige stared like I'd stepped over a chalked boundary. Trevor leaned in. You just killed yourself. No, I said. I just tripped the trap you set with my name. I turned toward the rail. Kendall, Dad called small. I paused half a heartbeat without turning. I'll read everything, he said, the words rough. I nodded where he couldn't see it. Walt matched my pace, slow enough I didn't have to rush, slow enough no one could close. Timer's still running, he murmured. Yeah, I said, and I'm not turning it off. Down on the turf, white yard stripes flared under cleats. Cheer blocks flipped, the stands roared, sound spilling like rain. A little girl tugged her mother's sleeve and pointed at the Hartley Home and Style Community Outreach banner. Ask something. The mom said whatever moms say. Under the ink, I could almost see manual adjustment rise like an oil sheen. We left the VIP rail and took the steps with the crowd. A local cop headed the other way gave Walt a nod. Walt nodded back and kept moving. I wasn't hunting victory. I was running the scan, emails sent, fail-safe armed, hard copy secured, cold copy locked, index complete, checklist smooth. At the bottom step, a siren flicked somewhere out on Main and died. I didn't expect lightning. Law shows up in flat shoes, slow, but it shows. Paige called after me. You picked a side. I didn't turn. No, I said, same voice I use before a night flight. I picked procedure. I stepped off the last riser. A cool hand of air slid down my collar. Friday night lights rolled on. The band moved to another fight song, kids whooped. I realized I was smiling, no gloat, no swagger, just lighter. Like when the gauges settle into the band, and you know. From here on out, the aircraft's flying on the truth you've put into it. Cedar Ridge woke to coffee, sprinklers, and a thicker hush than usual. I unlocked Walt's garage, popped the floor safe, checked the cold USB. The overhead flickered once like the room was blinking. Yesterday's checklist still hung square on the wall, calm enough to make my pulse slow. The prepaid buzzed. A short email from Agent Ruiz acknowledged. Initiating preliminary hold with bank. Do not engage further with subjects. I read hold a second time. Not victory, just the first break on a rolling wheel. By noon, the town chat started whispering. Heard Hartley isn't taking orders. Anybody know what's up? Wind through pines. I offered nothing. On Main, the glass at Hartley Home and Style wore a plain white sheet, store closed for inventory. Trevor taped an extra X across the corner, tidy move, shaky hands. Paige was nowhere. I walked past like you walk by a helicopter with the blades off, strange, but not something you grieve. That afternoon, Dad called. I heard him clear his throat, heard him breathe through words he'd practiced. Kendall, I'd like to see you. I picked Ortiz's diner. Coffee makes mouths remember they were built to drink before they were built to hurt. Mrs. Ortiz poured him a black Mia milk, slid over butter cookies. Dad palmed the cup. I've read everything. I waited. I want you to know I signed that letter thinking it was decorum. I didn't look hard enough. He pulled in a slow breath. A good man who'd followed small-town manners so long he'd forgotten paperwork has its own straight law. I'm sorry. An apology doesn't smash anything or patch everything. It sits there between two coffee spoons. I looked at him and saw the man who taught me straight rows, boots, lawn stripes, life, and realized he'd gotten this wrong the way decent people do. Dad, I said, I need a DMZ for a while. I won't badmouth anyone. I just won't be in the family picture until this is finished. He nodded, eyes bright in the way of a man who admits it's rain, not mist. Before he left, he took a photo from his pocket, me at 13 in a ball cap, hugging a paper bundle, smile crooked. You did what you believed then. You did it today. I tucked the picture into my wallet beside a mini copy of my ethics board. That night, Walt lit a little fire and threw on sausages. He didn't ask about Dad. He handed me a soda. Name it, he said. Name what? What we build next. I looked up into a peppered sky and thought of kids heading into exam week, a tired single mom on 2 jobs, a tech student stuck between hours and tuition. Rotor Fund, I said. Walt laughed. The Rotor Fund? Yeah. Blades turn because 100 small bolts don't betray their spec. We use any whistleblower award, if that ever shows, or town donations to seed scholarships for helicopter mechanics at the local trade program. Walt tipped his bottle. To the Rotor Fund. 3 days later, Ruiz called. Voice neutral, words firing like a piston in time. We've issued preservation notices to the bank and payroll provider. Thanks to Bravo, several initial cross-checks are notable. We'll need a sworn statement, but not today. I asked the only thing I cared about. My name. We've logged identity misuse. That portion will be handled separately. You were right not to engage further. Short call. Walt and I didn't speak after. We just let our breath land like a plane in a crosswind. Cedar Ridge kept ambling. The church bulletin board swapped flyers from uniform drive to end-of-season bake sale. People didn't say much about Page Beyond. They're doing inventory. I learned to walk by my last name on an old banner without my ears ringing. I helped Walt change oil in the mower. The smell of new oil quieted my head. That afternoon, I visited the community college and met the tech program advisor in a room with a Texas map on the wall. I pitched Rotor Fund like I'd pitch an overhaul. Objective, parts, sequence. She nodded a lot. We've got 3 second years working part-time at the county airfield. They're one tuition bill away from derailing. It's not much. We'll prioritize grit and torque, I said. Whoever keeps the word true in the craft gets the rotor lift. One night I wrote Dad a letter. Not long, not a defense. Just a road, me at 13 on the paper route, me leaving his birthday dinner, me pressing send now under the stadium lights, him saying, "I'm sorry," over coffee. I ended with a line Walt once told me, rewritten for daughter. I didn't beat my family. I beat the part of myself that would let my name launder something dirty. I sealed it. I didn't mail it. Some letters are written to keep your own spine straight, not to teach the postal service a route. A week later, the inventory sign came down. A new note went up, temporarily closed until further notice. The glass reflected me and Walt across the street, two silhouettes that didn't wave. I wasn't happy. I wasn't sad. Doors closed so wind doesn't blow trash in, that's all. Paige didn't call. Trevor didn't text. Dad sent one short line. "I'm learning to read slowly." I answered, "I'm learning to be quiet at the right times." Next Friday, Cedar Ridge lit up again. I took a corner booth at Ortiz's, listened to the game on the radio. Deep ball, caught, touchdown. The whole diner oohed. Mrs. Ortiz set down chicken soup and an envelope just thick enough. "Anonymous," she said. Inside, a few bills and a ballpoint note for Rotor Fund. "Your name stays clean. Thanks for keeping ours, too." I swallowed the knot with a spoonful of hot broth. Name, such a small word, carrying a whole bowl of life. Late, I drifted to the stadium fence. Stands dark, a few security bulbs burning. I pressed my forehead to cold rail and looked at the faded yard lines. I thought of Clara May, Ethan Cole, names that shouldn't be on a payroll ever. I'm still here, and my name has walked out of a maze of PDFs into light. Maybe tomorrow I head back to base for refresher quals. I'll bring a snapshot of Rotor Fund's first grant, a wobbly signature from the advisor, and a sticky from Walt. "Don't forget to torque bolt #3. Before I left the fence, the prepaid buzzed once. "Ruiz again, your packages led to formal review. Keep your switch for now." "Roger," I texted back, one military word, just enough. On the way home, I stopped at Walt's. He was latching the gate, porch light puddling gold over his cacti. "Soldier," he said, "take a beat." "Tomorrow," I said. "Tomorrow," he echoed, like checking a door's deadbolt. I hugged him once, quick and tight. In the driveway, I looked back at the garage, concrete, oil, paper, the room where I rebuilt the truth machine of my life and test ran it under stadium lights. It worked. It carried me here. No triumph parade, no brass finale, just quiet. In the truck, I slid the ethics board onto the dash under the visor clip. The last line in bold, "Don't let anyone use your name to sanitize something dirty." I turned the key. The engine came up smooth, like a sentence said right. As the tires rolled, I knew one thing. I didn't beat them. I pulled the pin on the trap with my name on it. Now, when the imaginary rotor spins in my head, it isn't the squeal of a belt rubbing a housing. It's clean air over clean metal, lifting me off the ground of someone else's spin.